acting is doing, acting is being, and there's no other. I mean, when I talk to first-time directors, I say, if your instruction takes more than 20 words, it's a bad instruction. You shouldn't be directing that way. You cannot go to an actor and huddle and explain a play in 6 moves. You go and say, try it louder. Don't look at her eyes. Don't sit until you say that line. You shake it, and then reality happens.
It's my pleasure to welcome Guillermo del Toro. Right. Welcome, Guillermo. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on the film on Pinocchio, which we'll talk about much later in the evening, along with many other things. It's really extraordinary. But it is always best to start at the beginning, as we know from The Wizard of Oz.
Like any meal.
Yeah, that's right.
I start by dessert.
That's right. James Whale's 1931 Frankenstein, which I just mentioned earlier, was a film you have said made you feel transfixed as a child, shocked by a lightning bolt of fervor when you were growing up in Guadalajara. Talk to us about the discovery of your imagination as a child growing up and the way it continues to be your lifeblood in the cinema and as a storyteller.
Well, I think I come from a very Catholic country, and imagination came from there, fairy tales and movies. A very strange combination, and Japanese animation. But my grandmother was exceedingly religious. She made Piper Laurie look like a party animal. She was like, Carrie had it easy next to me. And she used to read me the most disturbing pieces of the Bible. And when people say, oh, horror movies are gory, I go, no, the Bible is. And religion in Mexico is, I think in the Philippines and Mexico, we have a competition of see who gets the goriest saint. The Christ in my church was basically CSI. Every single wound on that Christ was anatomically correct. He had the bone exposed on the knees. There was parts of his ribs exposed. He was green. Like green, and when they said the body of Christ, I go, no. Let's talk a little bit first. But all that then clashed with fairy tales, and it clashed with horror movies. And when I saw Karloff cross the threshold, I saw a saint. I didn't see a monster. I saw a saint. His eyes rolled back like Saint Teresa, his eyes were ecstatic, and he was he had a very painful state of grace, and I was moved to tears. There is a thing called the Stendhal syndrome, which is when you are in the presence of art that is so beautiful that you almost have tremors. That's what happened to me. I was completely, and I emptied my soul into that. I said, that's me. That's me. Pinocchio and Frankenstein were me. And Pinocchio I saw with my mom when it was the second or third movie I saw with my mom. And I thought, this is how scary it feels to be a child. They get it. This guy gets me, Walt Disney, right? And I think Disney has an undercurrent of horror in his films. He understands that. So that is true. And it has happened a few times in my life. Probably I've had 10 or 12 ecstatic viewings of films, and it still happens. Rarely, but when it happens, it changes your life. When people say, talk about my movies, I say, I'm not a brand, but I'm an acquired taste. And it's not about how many people I reach, but how intensely I reach them. Because that's what you want. What you want is for somebody to love 1, 2, it doesn't matter. One movie is enough at a molecular level. If the movies penetrate into your molecular structure, they become you, And films have saved my life many, many times. Moments in which I think the world is absolutely repugnant or things are not worth going through, and I'm at the bottom of the bottom, and all of a sudden I see a film a Mitchell Eisen comedy, or I see a Frank Borsage melodrama, or a cartoon, and I find myself lifted above earth. And that's what art does.
Yeah.
So for me, horror is art. Religion is fairy tale. Fairy tale is horror.
Right. I like that.
You can keep going.
That's right. And that leads really well into my next question. It's about parable and metaphor in your films,
Yeah.
because I feel like there's something that we all capture as kids that we're not quite processing, which is the parable and metaphor in all of these stories. And in all of your films, the parable and metaphor is so deep. It's kind of Jungian in some ways.
So is my wife.
Yeah,
No, it's my agent. I better take it. 10% of fuck it. No, yeah, look, Jorge Luis Borges and many of the symbolist writers in Europe believed that parable and fable, particularly, were the most able stories because they're the oldest.
Yeah.
When we became sedentary as a species and we started stopping with the crops and we were able to keep a cave warm, what did we do? Tell stories immediately. And the entire narrative of mankind divides into two strands. Chronicle, which is we killed that mammoth over there and it killed Og and Ig got injured, That's one. And the other one is to talk about the world that we cannot comprehend with images that encompass it. We can talk about birth, death, the sun being a god, the moon being a goddess, the sun being angry, And so parable and fable are the best ways to grasp the ungraspable. They allow you to extract yourself from the mundane and touch the eternal. They are very close to religion. They're used in religion. They're used as instruction, but they can also be used for liberation and to liberate the spirit from the mundane. No other form does that. Drama, melodrama, comedy, they stay rooted on the verisimilitude of their beats, right? Yeah. Horror, fantasy, science fiction, arguably, etc. They allow you to grasp the Tempest through Forbidden Planet, or they allow you to talk about man's inhumanity to man through Soylent Green or Planet of the Apes. Solaris is about desire and thought and all these things, so they allow you that.
Yeah. We could go an hour on Planet of the Apes alone, so let's.
I can.
I can too. Yeah. So but
yeah.
Well, let's talk about in addition to creative, sort of recreative art, and which brings us to the fact that this Pinocchio is a stop motion and a beautiful piece of art in and of itself. But you started doing some stop motion when you were a kid as well, right? Yeah. Talk to us about that.
My first Super 8s a lot of them were clay animation. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I could, I bought a camera that actually did 1 frame per second. And I was able to animate, not very well, but animate. I was about 9 or 10 at that point. The best part of my career was over. I started teaching animation in high school to younger kids. I formalized my animation skills by founding a company that did makeup effects and stop motion. We had a great slogan. It said, "We're not the best, we're the only ones." It was a very small city. People didn't find it funny, by the way. So what I thought is this. What I thought is, I knew I wanted to make movies that nobody was doing in Mexico. And everybody was telling me, you are completely crazy to try to do these movies here. But I think one of the essential elements of art is disobedience. And to say, fuck it, to everything that is materially an obstacle, and say, I can do art with my blood and a canvas if there's no other chance. And I started trying to do an epic clay animation feature. It was called Omnivore. And it was my then girlfriend, my brother and I, we sculpted We did the skeletons, the armatures, the sets, and I was animating an old man sitting on a blue rock, waking up, and we went to see a movie and have a dinner at my parents' house. And when we came back, the studio had been burglarized.
Oh my God.
They destroyed all the puppets, destroyed all the sets, and proceeded to poo and pee on the floor, which fully prepared me for my feature career. You know? But it is. And then I said, live action, here I go. And I did Cronos. But I knew, a teacher of mine, screenplay writer, beautiful filmmaker called Jaime Humberto Hermosillo. He did, first time I came to New York, I came with a movie of his called Doña Herlinda and Her Son, which I line produced at age 19 or 20. It cost $5,000 before El Mariachi. and he said to us, if there's no road, make it. And other people can use it. So we founded a film school that's still going. We founded a festival that's still going. And I said, no one can do my makeup effects. I'll study makeup effects, and I'll do them myself, and then I'll close the company. And that's what I did. It took me 10 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I love that. If there's no road, make it.
Yeah, make it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, somebody needs it other than you.
Yeah. One last question on process, which is, do you start with ideas? Do you start with themes or story points? Because all your films are so rich in all of these, or characters, and go from there. Is there a kind of a process that you go through regularly with each script, or does it change all the time?
One of the natural things for me is to make altars. I love to arrange everything in an altar. You know, I make little monuments all over the house. I'm like some kind of large insect. I arrange things by theme. Like one of my passions is to arrange my bookshelf, which is extremely sad, but I like it. And I have a bookshelf that I call the Olympus, and when somebody disappoints me, I move them down one shelf, and I go, there you go. So you learn your lesson. It's a pretty sad thing, but what I think is thoughts and ideas should come out freely, and then you have to do a composition. All art is composition. All art is symphonic, all of it. And you need to arrange it, because no matter how carefully you arrange it and you think you know what it means, there will be 2 or 3 stratas that you're not thinking of. You know what? No one can. It's not mathematics. It's not an equation. You cannot arrange it, but you can compose it. And I think that's the way I work. Is I let everything come in, and then and sometimes the theme comes right away, or an idea. You know, with Pinocchio, I knew disobedience was going to be a theme, and I knew I didn't want him to change. He needed to stay Pinocchio, because I hate ideas like changing for love. I think that's one of the most terrifying things in romantic stories, is when somebody changes for love. You go, what's that? I mean, I don't understand. If they don't like you the way you are, get the fuck out of there.
Right.
You know, I think I mean, somebody will.
Yeah, right.
I guarantee you that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I think those are important things. You need to go by instinct. When the other day I was trying to define what a director does, and I said, well, a director makes self-portraiture and invites, provokes, and encourages everybody else to also do their self-portraiture, not yours. You don't want them to be portraying you. You want everybody to be portraying themselves. So if you're going to play Prospero or you're going to paint a set, I want you to leave your essence in that activity. And the best thing a director can do is that. That's why the essential thing that changes in a career is when you are young, you talk. When you're older, you listen. When you're young, you impose. When you are older, you watch. You know, you observe, and you try for everybody to feel the most important at one or another given moment in the production.
We mentioned characters, and in a moment we'll talk about some of the amazing characters and the performers who embody them in your films. But I have a question on the interplay of real life and cinema. And in reading up on on so many of your interviews, so often you will refer to things from growing up in Guadalajara, or family moments, or many things that find their ways into your stories and into your films, things you kind of wouldn't even expect, or small little details. And I'm wondering if that must be therapeutic. We were talking just now a couple of minutes ago before I came on stage about how all art is biography to a degree. And that process, though, of the story is one thing, and then these bits and pieces of your past or your parents' past or whatever make their way in. What is that like? What's that process like? Because it feels like it must be therapeutic, but there must be lots of things going on.
It is. It is. I think definitely. I thought when I was young, I thought art of therapy was a line, that it didn't happen, but it does. It's 100% real. I think that, but you need to learn the reverse. Like, for example, when I was young, a director, anything that was different than what I thought was a challenge. And now it's an opportunity. So, I mean, our defects are undeveloped merits, undeveloped virtues. They're exactly the same. What makes you bad at your job, if you train it and hone it, will make you good at it. If you think about, for example, one of the great directors in the history of cinema, which is Kubrick, his very, very first movie is stilted, weird, its rhythms are off, and then you see Barry Lyndon or Eyes Wide Shut, and the same awkward rhythms, the same sort of stone solid compositions become style. So I always think the same, that if you take biography and everything that doesn't work in your biography and you obliquely talk about it, I don't think I want to make a movie about my childhood ever, but I've done it. Pinocchio, I've done Hellboy, I've done Devil's Backbone, I'm the girl in Pan's Labyrinth, and so on and so forth. I mean, that's the biography of my soul. It's a lot more interesting than the biography of my body, you know? Yeah. I think it really is, because I believe that we all exist, even the most mundane of us, we exist at two levels. We exist at the physical level and at the symbolic level. What do I mean? I'm watching you, you're watching me. You don't know who I am, but I represent something, and so do you, you know? To each other, we represent things. And the more you're in the world, you realize, for example, the person you hate, or when you approach anything, a piece of art, a book, a piece of news with hate, it becomes a mirror. You hate something in yourself, and that's why you're pouring that in there. When you approach a person with love, that thing, book, person becomes a window, and you see through it. And so biography is useful not only for you to purge, but for it to be used symbolically by others. What do I mean by that? I have learned at my age that I wear my fragility in the outside on my sleeve, because I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of being wrong. I'm not afraid of being frail. And I wear my strength on my sleeve because it structures people. I'm not afraid of structuring a conversation. I'm not afraid of defining a line. And I wear everything that makes me me outside. This is me. I mean, you know me more by seeing my movies than if we lived together. You would go, there goes that guy into that room again, you know? In the movies, I'm there. I'm those 12 movies. I'm those TV series. I'm those animations. I'm all of that. That's me. Yeah.
I love that. And then to spin it out almost to go larger on it is the notion of the way your work is set in specific eras and how important that is. Because if we know you through your art, when it comes to situating your films, whether it's during the Spanish Civil War, or the area between the wars like Pinocchio, Italy, or Spain, in Devil's Backbone, in Pan's Labyrinth, in all of your films, even obviously in The Shape of Water, in the time between Sputnik and the Cuban Missile Crisis, that is specifically a moment. Talk to us about how important that is as well, because not only does it root the story down, but it also helps us situate.
Well, for example, the Shape of Water happening, it can only happen before Kennedy is assassinated. You know, after that the country completely changes and the tension changes, and you have to say, when should this happen? It's not, and what I do, which can be misunderstood, And for example, on Devil's Backbone is the perfect example on how to do it. I approach it and I say, okay, this is right before Madrid falls to the fascist forces, right? But this is a small little orphanage in the middle of nowhere. The war is way beyond the horizon, but it's not. See? Because politics are executed by avatars. I'll give you an example. I don't know which side you lean. My hope is if you are SAG-AFTRA, you're left. God bless. but let us pretend that you do. Even if you're not, the metaphor applies because it's avatars. Trump didn't change an area surrounding the White House or America. He changed the world. He changed the semantics. And you could live in a small village in the Alps in Switzerland, and you were affected by the telluric change of human consciousness that happened during those years. Lincoln, Obama, Kennedy, the big figures, Mussolini, Hitler, the terrible, beautiful, horrible, virtuous, sinners, whatever it is, these are macro, gigantic avatars. And they change like a shockwave. I'm talking about me or you being symbolic. These people are massively symbolic. And the ripple is no matter where you are. So if you address the politics as the central argument, it becomes political. So on Pinocchio, we don't see the war. We see it happening in the corners. But all the characters, the dynamics, are between fathers and sons, which is the basic dynamic of fascism. The control of the totalitarian father or the misconstrued father or the misconstrued son or whatever. So that informs that. And Devil's Backbone, the war is happening over there, but the bomb explodes, everything explodes in the orphanage except the bomb.
Yeah, right.
The people that work for other people resent them. There is all the dynamics of war are happening there. That to me is more interesting. And what I do is I take or something, and the first instinct you have with material is, this is what people do with it. What else can I do that people don't do? You know, I always say very close to the wrong decision is the right decision. Yeah. Right next to it. So you have to go to the wrong decision to find the unique decision. Is that clear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it leads to my next question about Cronos.
I knew it.
You knew it, right? Yeah, it led perfectly to it. Because I read that you said about it, which is true, is that it reverses the cliches of horror films while also following them religiously. And
yeah.
It absolutely is right in that amazing movie from '93, which is phenomenal, and it's such an amazing feature debut. But let's talk about how important it is to sort of do that, to kind of veer close to wrong, but right, and kind of reverse, but also stay close.
Well, this is very, very hard for me to. I haven't been able to explain it in 30 years, so I have no hope of doing it today. But I'll try.
Okay.
You know, what I try to do, I try to have a life that is entertaining. So I try to make movies that are in genre and rules as different one from the other as possible. So in the same decade, I can do Pacific Rim or Pan's Labyrinth, or Devil's Backbone and Hellboy 2. You know, I don't want to be bored, number one. I also like to learn from one genre what to do in another. I could only do Devil's Backbone because I did Mimic. Right. The toys I played with on Mimic, I put to work on Devil's Backbone, and so on and so forth. I use a technograin for the first time on Blade 2, and then I put it to really good use on Pan's Labyrinth. You know, so, and what I try to do when I approach a piece of genre is I study that genre deeply, profoundly, make notes, and say, okay, how can, you know, if you think of a tango, or a cumbia, or a salsa, there's a rhythm to it. So if you don't do that, it's not a salsa. You have to follow the sort of structure. And the same thing is if you're doing a giant robot movie, you want it to be a giant robot movie, but subvert it from the inside. Go against the grain. So, or go against the grain of a Gothic romance. Crimson Peak is the most anti-romantic Gothic romance. Yeah. You know, Pacific Rim, when I went in to pitch, I said, I don't want an army from one country saving the world. I said, I want all the scragglers from every country saving the world. I don't want them to be sanctioned by a government. I want them to be rogue. I want Idris Elba as the leader of civilization, and aided by Australians, Mexican technical engineer played by Clifton, and you substitute those values, and then you end up with something that looks like something but operates as something different. The final part of trying to make this understandable to you, which I failed all my career, but there is a symbolist illustrator in Mexico, which, the symbolist school is very important for me, both in writers like Marcel Schwab or illustrators like Felician Robes. They really deconstructed symbolism. And this guy comes really late. His name is Julio Ruelas, and he has a drawing in ink called Profane Pietà. If you see it, is a beautiful crucifixion with Mary at the feet of and it looks exactly like a Pietà. And it could be in any church. But if you look really, really carefully, the angel of death is behind Jesus. Jesus has an erection. The Virgin Mary is being bitten by a snake. And every single symbol gets subverted inside. I ordered a statue carved in Mexico. Nobody notices it. Is San Michael the Archangel fighting the devil, but they are reversed. The devil is on top, and the Mexican standoff, Saint Michael is on the bottom. Nobody notices. So this is what I do. You just take the symbol and change it so it operates. And this I learned from Hitchcock. Hitchcock, I think, created what I call cyanide bonbons. He created pieces of entertainment so pregnant with anarchist ideas that people went, oh, this is delicious. But they were full of tragedy, loss, drama, of darkness, and so on and so forth. So that's what is important for me with the rules of every genre. I don't even remember.
Yeah, no, that's pretty, no. And even storytelling, I just watched Lady Vanishes again the other night, and there's that moment where in any other film you would think that we would still be right with the protagonist in not knowing who's a spy and who's not. But then Michael Redgrave walks out, and we are there, and we're privy to that information. And
I love that because everything we do with the audience is information and drama. Everybody, wardrobe, set design, actors, director, everything is telling the story. Everything. Wardrobe is telling the story. Set design is telling the story. And Hitchcock is a filmmaker I've studied deeply. I wrote a book that I recommend nobody buys when I was 22, which means I knew everything. It's like at 22, the French say the less liquid in the bottle, the more noise it makes. But that was me at 22. I was like full of myself.
Right.
But it was really moving to go through every single film and analyze it. And Hitchcock is the master of the dispensation, how he parcels information for the audience to want more. Hollywood oftentimes says it's not clear enough. And you say, good. Because if it was clear enough, the audience would stop watching. A story is not made of answers, it's made of questions. When we were starting Nightmare Alley, I knew how long the first act was going to take. The first act is a whole hour. And the only thing I said to my wife and co-writer, Kim Morgan, I said, I want to open with an image that is such a big question that the audience says, yeah, but what happened with that? And it's him dragging the body of his father into a hole and burning it. So you go, what is the story with this guy? And we answer it in the last 10 minutes of the film. But what you do is you share your story. You say, and then the door opened, and tomorrow. It's what I call, when we do TV series, I say, I need more Velcro at the end of this episode. I need, the bad version of it is you end up the episode with someone coming out of the shadow and says, I will destroy them soon. That's the bad version of it. Right. But in melodrama, there's a lot of Velcro that you need.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I love that. A lot of Velcro at the end.
Yeah. But it's like, when will he tell him? When will he tell her that he is her father?
Right.
Not just yet.
Tomorrow.
That's Velcro. Yeah.
Well, another avenue for information that you just spoke about, Guillermo, is of course acting and the vivid characters who have populated so many of your films and all those amazing actors. We're going to start off with the youngest to speak about, Ivana Baquero from Pan's Labyrinth, amazing in 2006. She won several awards for the film. She is heartbreaking and haunting in the film. Let's talk about working with her, and obviously you worked with child actors in Devil's Backbone, but I'm wondering what
Cronos.
Cronos, what that search was like though, for the actress to play Ophelia, and what you were looking for in an actress.
I think kid actors, they always have the same ratio: 100 terrible ones for one good, perfect one, one perfect, and 100 bad. So when you are around 92, you go, it's coming. Just be patient. Just let's hold on.
Right.
And she walked in, and she was different from the way I thought, but she was so real. Because evidently the only thing you don't want an actor to do is act. You don't want to make decisions. Both as director and actor, if you see a decision, you should stop. If you're doing, like in Nightmare Alley, the second shot of the movie was a beautiful, incredibly complex, phenomenal shot. I loved it so much that I hated it. Because I said, I cannot open the movie with the second shot being a movie shot. Because it's showing that it's a movie. So I took it out. And as an actor, you ask for actors to come with the capacity to be and not the capacity to decide. You don't want to make a decision. You try things until that thing is alive. And Ivana, the secret to directing kids is don't direct them like kids. Direct them like actors. Talk to them like you would any other actor. Tell them what you need, plan how you get it, and that's it. I think that in this world, to talk vertically to anyone is the biggest mistake you can make.
I like that. Talk to the actor, not to the child, which I think
is talk to the actor, exactly.
And that obviously I'm sure was the case with Gregory Mann, who voices Pinocchio and Carla in Pinocchio. And what was that process like? Because that's an important vocal performance as well.
That's different. For example, with Ivana, like I do with most actors, I would deliver to her an 8-page biography that details her zodiac sign, what she eats, what she doesn't eat, what music she listens to, and the biography all the way to the end of the movie, from birth to the end of the movie. And then the actor, you say, ignore anything that doesn't work, but if there's anything in there that works, let's talk about it. With Gregory, it's a voice performance. So what we wanted was to keep him in the moment. So we would bring his father or mother for the scenes where there was tenderness. We would bring the actor, David Bradley, who played Geppetto, if we needed to have a dialogue with his father. And when he needed to be insolent, I would ask him to push my belly and call me dummy. I would say, no, just say, shut up, dummy. And he would, shut up, dummy, and then he would laugh, and then he was ready to do Pinocchio. Acting is doing, acting is being, and there's no other, when I talk to first-time directors, I say, if your instruction takes more than 20 words, it's a bad instruction. You shouldn't be directing that way. You cannot go to an actor and huddle and explain a play in 6 moves. You go and say, try it louder. Don't look at her eyes. Don't sit until you say that line. You shake it, and then reality happens.
I want to clarify, is that something you do quite often with actors, to give them that biography sort of from birth to the end of the movie-ish kind of thing?
Some of them use it, some of them don't. Richard Jenkins famously prized himself for not using it. I don't do it for him anymore. I just say, go to catering, man.
And I want to segue now, of course, to some actors and start there, of course, with the phenomenal work of Doug Jones, who is piscatorial or purgatorial, as your work needs him to be. He's Abe Sapien in your 2 Hellboy films, of course, The Fawn and The Pale Man. in Pan's Labyrinth. He has several roles in Crimson Peak, and of course, the amphibian creature known as the Asset in The Shape of Water, or the love interest, I think, is most of us would call him, not the Asset. You worked with him first on Mimic. What did you see in him, in the physicality and the soulfulness that he has, that really clicked with you?
It was not that, it was the dedication. Look, he did two things that are really, really right. And I think that is useful for directors, actors, writers, anyone. Take what only you can do and hang on to that, you know? And I guarantee you, there's something you can do that nobody else can. I 100% guarantee. I don't know what it is. You know, if you believe all actors, we all have fencing and equestrian abilities. Everybody has martial arts and PhD in literature, you know. But if you actually have one thing that you can do better than anyone, do that. And Doug was great at playing creatures. And there's a difference between a great performer and a great actor, right? A great performer is ultimately working with something that is an illusion. An actor is working with something that is a reality. And Doug is not a performer. Doug is an actor. And that was very crucial for me in something like Pan's Labyrinth. And that movie demanded of him horrible things. Not only did he needed 6 to 7 hours of makeup, but then he had to do all his lines phonetically in Spanish, and sometimes backwards. Because sometimes the fawn would come walking, and I wanted the fawn walk to be weird. So he would walk backwards, and then we would project it forward. So he would move weird, and he would say all his lines in reverse. So, you know, and he does it all. That's the other thing. He's very resistant.
Oh, yeah.
He lasts a long time. Yeah. So, yeah, that's also a virtue.
Yeah. It's amazing because in watching all of your films again in preparation for this, obviously there's the physicality of the fawn is like it literally is the personification of sort of evil impishness and mystery, and the physicality of the amphibian in The Shape of Water is dominant and strong and ability and when he is sort of standing there in the final act of the film, I can't think of anyone who ever could do that the way he does. It's a
no, and the instructions are easy. Like we came up with the gestures of a goat, shaking from the top to the back. You know, like when a goat shakes, it starts on the shoulders and goes to the rump. And we came up with that for the old fawn, and he walked with difficulty, and then he grows younger in the movie. That's something people notice or don't notice. And then when he's young, I would say move like a rock star in a concert, and you know, walk like you're holding court in a. And I would say more Mick Jagger, more Bowie, you know. And then on Shape of Water, I said you have to stand like a toreador, like a bullfighter, butt out, you know, and really straight and sort of full of, you know, when you're a swimmer. Or when you're basically made of lean musculature, you have an incredible center. And I said to Doug, because we know there are two things essential in an actor: find the voice and find the body. Right? If you find the center of the body, how does this character holds? Like one thing I noticed with British actors do an amazing American accent, but they don't occupy the space like Americans. Like, you know, we are expansive. An American sits down and his legs out, and they own the place. And a British actor sometimes sits compact. And you have to say, occupy more space. You know, this is an American character.
Right.
You know, and it's true. So when you find certain traits that physically define the character, you grab that, and the voice. Like Bradley Cooper doing Nightmare Alley, he wanted to know where Stan was, not state, town. And then he went into working the accent from exactly that town. And once he finds the voice, he has the character.
I love that level of specificity to it.
I think that the more you're specific, the more you're open to changing. You know, you come in with jewels, but if somebody brings a better diamond, you take it. but you're prepared.
Yeah. You're ready to go wide if you've got the singularity there.
Yeah, prepare as much as you can to abandon everything.
Yeah.
Like when we did Nightmare Alley, all of a sudden, I would have all my boards, and we would say, "What if he comes from over there?" Yeah. And we would do it in one shot.
Yeah. Wow.
And I had 50 shots and coverage and this, and I would, let's do it in one shot like this.
Go this way. Yeah. Ron Perlman, of course. The story I heard that I have read a few times is that you wrote, as you were courting him for Cronos, you kind of wrote a letter to him that was sort of talking about all the nuances in his performances that you could see. He had worked for Jean-Jacques Annaud twice, and he was on Beauty and the Beast, which was a phenomenon in the late 80s for 3 or 4 seasons on CBS. And his performance in all of your collaborations are full of funny nuances themselves and phenomenal. Talk to us about maybe seeing something in Ron that you knew was going to click, and that obviously that then grew throughout so many collaborations.
I just thought he was a leading man.
Yeah.
I just thought this is the greatest leading man ever. Why isn't he a leading man? And there are the characteristic of a leading man is something you cannot create. Either the camera is interested or it isn't. And it's not about being beautiful or physically perfect. It's about being interesting the whole time. When you think about Charles Bronson, who started, playing bit parts, the Sandpiper, House of Wax. Right. It was nobody would have said this is a star. Right. But the camera was interesting. And what happened to that guy? And it's an inaccessible, you cannot ungraspable quality. Yeah. And I think it's about the audience wanting them to do good or fare well, and Ron has that. Yeah. Ron has that something disarming that I found really, really powerful, and I thought I wrote him a letter saying that, and he came to dinner at a place called the Bombay Palace on Wilshire in L.A., and I had no money, and I was like looking at the right side of the menu because I was gonna pay. And I said to Ron, they said, okay, if I only order dessert. And he thought it was quirky. It was really, I was a miserable bastard. I couldn't pay. He ordered a full meal, I ordered dessert. Yeah.
Well, you give him such fantastic entrances too. I just sort of have to point out, including obviously in Crimson Peak. In Pacific Rim when he, is there with the great gold shoes, and he's phenomenal. And Hellboy, of course. Like there's something about the entrances of Ron Perlman in your film that you cannot help but crack a beautiful smile, including even in Nightmare Alley in the first act.
I think all actors should be very aware of their first entrance. Everybody, and exit. That's crucial. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to be right. It's not about a special shot. It's not even in the hands of the director or the cinematographer necessarily. It can be. That's the best kind of entrance. But if you're working solo, be very specific about what you're projecting and what you're doing, even if it's secret. There is because the camera is an instrument that I guarantee you has metaphysical properties. It sees things that we don't see. How everybody says stars are little people with big heads. True, but also with elements that are irresistible to the camera, and they're not necessarily the most magnetic in real life. So the entrance is an art. Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me, there's obviously the famous line that obviously all villains think that they're the heroes of their story.
Of course.
But it also can apply to any character. It sort of reminds me of that line from Shakespeare in Love, where you describe Romeo and Juliet, and the guy says, well, it's about this nurse. It's all about how you. So if you play your entrance as if to this person, this is their story, right?
100%. It has to be about that nurse.
Yeah.
It has to be. Yeah. Otherwise, don't do the day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it comes now to an iconic performance that absolutely describes Sally Hawkins in The Shape of Water. By the way, I'd love a round of applause for all of these actors that we have just mentioned, because they are all phenomenal in all of Guillermo's films. She is one of many strong female characters in your work, which includes, of course, Mia Wasikowska in Crimson Peak, and Manibel Verdú in Pan's Labyrinth, Selma Blair in the Hellboy films. Kate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, and Toni Collette in Nightmare Alley, and so many. What were those discussions like with Sally about the role of Eliza? Because you mentioned ineffable. There is something about her that is just transcendent, and yet also so familiar in so many ways, as if she's coming straight from our hearts out.
Yeah, I saw Sally on a TV series by the BBC called Fingersmith, which then was remade as The Handmaiden by Park Chung-woo, and I was completely transfixed. I thought, this is the most present, absolutely magnetic actress I've seen. And I then saw her in Submarine, the comedy, and I was watching it with my kids, and I said, I'm going to write a movie for her. And I started writing a movie for her. And it took a few years, but I wrote it, and then I called her. And I said, I'm writing a movie for you. And she goes, oh, thank you. And then I saw her at a party, and I was a little drunk, and I said, I'm writing a movie for you. Said, yeah, sure. And then I gave it to her. And what I tried to do is, when I write for an actor, I do what I put a bow on it. Like, it's a gift. It's something, I think there's a almost esoteric rule. If you want to receive, give. It's 100% true. If you want to receive, just giving is the most absolutely enriching thing in the world. And when I work with an actor, I want to give them. I want to give them and give them and give them, and you cook a meal and have them sit down and then cook together, and it's just joy. And Sally, when you're working with a good actor, everything that you stage, you go, I'm a good writer. No, you're not. They're really good actors.
Yeah, right.
No, but you did it specifically for them. And I think specificity is important.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to do things she had not done. And that's the other thing. When I write for an actor, I write for parts that they've never done before. Like Bradley had never played a character as doomed, as a sort of selfish and brutal as Stan in Nightmare Alley. Impossibly, to my knowledge, Kate Blanchett had never played a femme fatale, which is like, what? Right? And so on and so forth. So, but you don't write a hero for The Rock.
Yeah.
Because The Rock is going, another hero, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like when I met with Michael Shannon, and I said, I want you to play this character in The Shape of Water, and he says, am I going to be another fucking villain? And I said, read it, because if you were only that, I would not cut away to you with a rotting finger. I wouldn't know your story with the car. I wouldn't know your relationship to your wife, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And he I don't know if you know Michael, he's really, really imposing. And then the day I showed him the movie complete in Toronto, he came out crying. And he hugged me and he said, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever done. And it feels really good, because you gave something new.
Yeah. You mentioned Bradley, which is the next performance I want to talk about, because I feel as if Bradley and Nightmare Alley is different in a lot of ways from a lot of your films, because whereas there's so often the case where we're with the protagonist as they're facing off against bullies or threats of
He is the bully.
He is the bully, and we see him sort of evolve in front of us, using entertainment to be an even more formidable bully. And then by the end, I'm not going to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Everybody.
You hopefully that he gets a comeuppance, and it's nourishing. But that's a very interesting sort of perspective, because it was new for you, and obviously it was new for him, and that was an interesting perspective, to be kind of with the bully, with the antagonist throughout the whole film.
Well, it was the years of Trump. Yeah. And I was very interested in talking about that. Yeah. I was very interested in someone that lies so much that he believes it's true. Yeah. That's basically the movie. Yeah. In psychic spheres, they call it shut-eye. Shut-eye is when you start believing you have powers. And that happens to doctors, by the way. It's a different name for that syndrome, but it's a God syndrome, a God complex. And you see it. You see people that are doing cold readings and Black Rainbow and all those tricks, and then suddenly they get such a rush from having powers that they start getting drunk on their own things. And Bradley and I made a very careful study of him because it was a time of, I said, we are storytellers. We are no different than this guy. The great difference is he knows is a lie, and we know is the truth. And that makes it completely a different approach to storytelling. But we dug deep into our own insecurities, and we discussed them. Yeah. We became basically brothers in 3 years. Wow. It's like, like he says, we had a 15-year relationship in 3 years. Wow. Yeah. And we ended up being able to challenge each other, to really go to places where the final shot of the film is absolutely, I think, one of the finest pieces of acting you can see, because it's real. Yeah. It's completely real. It's him facing and reckoning with everything. Yeah. But he is really reckoning with things, So it was a very different exercise. It changed me forever. Yeah. I it's one of those collaborations that you keep for the rest of your life. Yeah. I cannot direct actors the same way. I will direct them with everything that we use, that we discovered together, that we gave each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that I was talking to an actor I'm writing a part for him, and I read 60 pages of the new screenplay with him while I was in New York, and he was asking for answers, and I said to him, the answer is we're going to be both in the jungle. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Like, we'll find it. But we will be side to side in the jungle trying to find this thing. It's that if it's clear from the beginning, it's not worth pursuing. You need to get lost a little. That's the difference between being an artist and an artisan, and the difference between being a traveler and a tourist. A tourist says 10 to 12, Eiffel Tower, 12 to 1, lunch in the Tuileries. A traveler goes, I'm in Paris, fuck it. I'm going to eat over there, I'm going to get lost over here, I'm going to take the wrong cab. Yep. That's traveling. Yeah. And I think art is traveling, it's not tourism.
Yeah, I love that, and just that last line of Nightmare Alley of "I was born for it." It's so beautifully. It's a completion of a journey that we see coming from the beginning, and it's so perfect.
Yeah, and that's specificity because Kim Morgan and I wrote that, and the original line was I was made for it, and I said it has to be born. Yeah, and we. That's the only time our marriage was strained. and the value of that word, and then Bradley came in and I said, I think it's born, and then we tried it, and Kim said, yeah, that's the one that works. And Mark Twain said, the difference between the right word and the next to right word is the difference between lighting and the lighting bug. Yeah. And it's true. If you say, I was made for it, that's one thing. If I was born for it, talks about destiny. Yep. So there is not such a thing as it's all the same. I was writing lyrics, or I was listening to the lyrics that Paul Williams was writing for a musical adaptation of Pan's Labyrinth. That never happened. Wow. But I was there with Paul Williams, and I said, what if we change "but" to "and"? And he turned and said, it's not the same thing, is it? Okay, that's my career in lyricism. Right. I'm done.
Right. Yeah. Which we could also talk an hour about Phantom of the Paradise, which we won't. So, yeah, oh my God. That'll be a Phantom of the Paradise Planet of the Apes special edition.
I like it.
Yeah, of course, me too. Just to wrap up about acting, what are some of the things, Guillermo, that you look for in general when it comes to casting? Because your performers all fit your stories and your films to a T, and I'm just going to, maybe it's even something that is germane to every specific project. But is there anything you look for specifically about casting?
I think if you talk to any actor, the problem is the same with directing. Directing a movie, its natural state is not to get made. Yeah. People say, that bullshit. If you build it, they will come. The real line is, if you build it, they will come or not. Yeah. That's. But if you don't build it, no one will fucking show up.
Right.
So you gotta build it.
Right.
right? But the real line is, or maybe not.
Yeah.
You know, and as an actor, you are, for the largest part of your career, you're on the maybe not.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But you gotta show up. I tell you, what never happens is, it doesn't happen with a headshot. It doesn't happen with a recommendation. It happens with you being there that day. You know? So what you find is, like, I'll give you a story. The guy that plays the pie vendor in Shape of Water is the guy that was the assistant of the casting director. And in the 3 movies before Shape of Water, he would read the lines for the actors doing the casting. And I kept thinking, that guy, I'm more interested in his lines than the lines of the other actors. And I wrote him that part.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he was there.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. Now, will it happen? I don't know. When I met Jim Cameron for the first time in 1991 at a barbecue at Ron Perlman's house, he said, I hear you mortgage your house for a movie. I said, sure. Yeah, for my first movie. He says, you know you may lose it, right? And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, then you're a director. Because you may lose it, and you are still doing it. Maybe nobody shows up, but you have to be there.
Yeah.
So that's what you find the actor when they walk in. And there's no doubt. There's a very probably apocryphal story to some degree, in which Milos Forman said that the things that had made F. Murray difficult to cast, and had, he was 5 years past his prime, and he was a little sort of seething or whatever. Those characteristics is what made him say, this is Salieri. I worked with F. Murray a few times. He's an incredible actor, phenomenal. But he came in after having played parts, small parts, little character parts, and he got the role of a lifetime by being there. So I think that's when the actor walks in, when the character walks in.
Yeah. It's like Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins after things like Fear Strikes Out or whatever, but there was something about Perkins that obviously Hitchcock could pick up on that made him perfect for Psycho.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Hitchcock was Norman Bates.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about his biography and the fact that he, as a child, at the end of every day, he would go up to his mother's room and stand by the foot of her bed and recite to her what had happened the whole day before being allowed to go to bed.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, it is.
And I think if he saw himself as anything, was a thin guy.
Yeah,
so
right.
Let's go, Anthony.
I also want to mention other collaborations, which is important. And DPs, obviously, Guillermo Navarro and Dan Louston, who are so important, as well as obviously composers and production designers. These are obviously all quivers in the arrow for a filmmaker. These are collaborations that are so vital, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if somebody doesn't bring their game that day, the day is lost. And I know this sounds like, oh, sure. No, it's absolutely true. A stunt performer that doesn't hit it, a rigging technician that didn't rig it. There's the old joke, right? What is the hardest profession in a movie? Said focus puller. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's the most important person in the entire damn production. Yeah. Not the director, not the actor, not the star, the guy. And that's why most focus pullers drink. Because when they do their job, nobody says, hey, it's in focus. But when they fail, everybody goes, what?
Is right.
Yeah. So everybody needs to bring the A game. And I think, but there are certain collaborators that give voice to the movie by your side, the composer, DP, production designer, wardrobe designer, and what I say is the more you know everybody's job, whether you're an actor or a DP, or the more you know everybody's job, the more you know your job. For example, in stop motion on Pinocchio, if you're going to direct the puppets, you need to know how they're made. You may have made them yourself. You need to know how the DP is lighting. You know to know how the set, because the sets in stop motion need to come apart like a Rubik's Cube. for the animator to get in and move the puppet and get out and close the set again and all that. So you need to know everything. It's like when I design a set, months and months before my DP comes in, I'm my DP. Yeah. I tell the production designer, where is the light coming from? Mm-hmm. Where is the window? What is the single source? What is how am I gonna get a bounce? You know, I lay it out. Yeah. And then my DP comes in and they're pleased. They're happy that you thought of that.
Yeah. Let's say you mentioned Pinocchio, perfect lead-in. Let's talk about the collaborations within Pinocchio, because it took 1,000 days to shoot, give or take. That's 3 years for those of us who are mathematically challenged. You have spoken often about your love of animation, Guillermo, the lure of it in big and small ways, and now with your co-director, Mark Gustafson. Let's talk about the poetry that stop motion brings. You guys had different sizes. There was giant Pinocchio heads for the scenes, obviously, where the cricket is on the shoulders, and small ones this big, right?
Yeah, and I actually, a credit I don't understand is co-director. We both directed, which is a very different proposal. Yeah. Because co means like there's a lead. I think that it's beautiful that we, on the execution of every day, we were both directing. And I like that because I think that a movie of this magnitude needed both of us. And what you do on the day-to-day is we started right at the pandemic. So everybody was by Zoom. And the animators were there, and I made a big speech to the animators, and I said, you are not animators, you're actors. And in between action and cut, the shot is yours. You know? I said, this is what we want, this gesture, we animated failed gestures, you know, something going wrong, stumbling. This water being a little out of reach, or turning it, or all unnecessary stuff to give them life, you know. But then we said, if the puppet says they need something else, give it to the puppet, you know. And we credit them right next to the voice cast. So there's the credits for Kate Blanchett, Ron Perlman, you know, and then there's the credits for the animators right next to them, because it's cast. And I think you didn't animate. You may come with this or that, but you have to credit the animator as a cast member. So that's a great collaboration.
And it makes it so poetic too, because it feels so. It is not like CGI. It is not like other forms of animation.
Completely handmade.
Completely. It's amazing.
Completely handmade. And if you watch the movie or watch it again, the level of detail of the performance is absolutely beautiful. It is. You know, we were able to dictate, like normally in animation, everything is very clean and almost like a sitcom, and it's hyper and a little too stylized. But we wanted, if it takes 6 moves to sit down on the chair, we said, give me all 6 moves. Don't make it clean. Make it, you know, there's a shot I adore where Geppetto sits on a pew in the church, and he lands a little further from his box, and he has to scooch. Now that is a day. That is a day or a week. The normal animator generates between 1 and 3 seconds of animation a week. So when I say do that, I'm paying a week. I'm allowing, protecting a week of work for something that the studio will never understand. Why are you doing that? And you have to do it in a really protected environment so that the animators know it's going to end up in the movie. And then he scooches over, he goes to close his box, and he notices a jar is open. And he goes to the jar, closes the lid, and now pulls up, thinks, and closes. Those are 7 moves you didn't need, but they are 7 moves that were needed to give life. What we do is we need to simulate reality. When you're working with a live actor, you pray for a mistake, right? You pray for an accident. Somebody forgets a line, somebody sits before time, something happens that makes the shot alive. In animation, you have to plan it one by one, frame by frame, and there is things like that all through the movie,
And if anyone hasn't seen it or you haven't read about it, because it is Guillermo, of course, you will know that it is not like any version of Pinocchio you may know of. Talk to us, Guillermo, about how important it is, because it is a dark story, but it's also a story of life within darkness, and it's how important it was for you to bring these aspects of a story that people may not envision when they think about Pinocchio to the story.
Well, the main thing was to talk about fathers and sons, and I learned before my father passed away, I learned more about who I thought he was. I really never solved that puzzle. Very few of us solved that puzzle, you know. But I also learned how he viewed me when he viewed me, which was occasionally, you know. And as a father, I carefully decided early on that I would avoid all his mistakes, by which process I ended up repeating all of them.
That's right.
You know, exactly.
Yeah.
And one morning, right before you brush your teeth, you look in the mirror and it's your dad.
Yeah.
And you go, how did he get here? You know?
Yeah.
And I wanted, as the cricket says in Pinocchio, it's about imperfect fathers and imperfect sons.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think we can and need to forgive each other and love each other for our imperfections. Or we will not make it, by the way, as a species. We will not make it. Yeah. And we live in a world in which the prerequisite for most things, except fucking politics, is perfection and being immaculate. Yeah. We demand our artists to behave like statesmen, and our statesmen can do whatever the fuck they want. I can't understand this. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think that most artists that I know and love are full of defects. And they're defects that can be benign, because it's mostly how we view each other, right? Yeah. I'm not talking about people that murder or rob. I mean, I'm talking about people that are eccentric or off kilter, or, you know, I think that we allow each other a lot more oxygen in the gray than in the black and white. The black and white are really, really low on oxygen. Yeah. So this movie says, can Geppetto learn to be a father as opposed to Pinocchio learn to be a good boy? Yeah. Which is so constrictive. Yeah. You know, I think that that's the mistake some parents do, is think of the kids as accessories for their own grandiose self-perception. And I want to show a different, so it's very personal in that way. Yeah. And it talks, and the reason it took so long to get made, I mean, for more than 15 years, almost much more than that, we pursued this movie. And I wanted to make it about life and death, which is not a great pitch. It's about life and death. Pinocchio dies 4 times and is during the rise of Mussolini. Oh.
There you go.
There you go. Right. But it's what it's about, and it's what was important for me. I mean, otherwise, why do it again? Right. If you're gonna tell the same story, you know. So that is what integrity is. What delays the labor, and is what makes it worth it. Yeah. You know, because integrity is the reason for it. Yeah. You know, and I have 34 screenplays I've written or co-written, and I made 12 movies. So 22 movies have not happened for the right reasons. Yeah. And believe me, I believe that. I think when a movie doesn't happen, the universe is telling you something. Listen. Listen. Because like when we planned Mountains of Madness for 2 years, we did storyboards, and when they canceled it, I turned to my crew and everybody, and I said, great practice, guys. We did really good practice. The next one will be better, you know, but you gotta listen. Exactly what the universe gives you is exactly what you need at that moment, not what you get, you know, not what you want.
Right, right. All those things that you talked about with Pinocchio make the story as beautiful as the artwork in it. It's really an extraordinary piece of work. We're going to go to some of your questions right now. First one asks, I am curious, Guillermo, about your rain room. How did you think about it? Please tell me more about it.
When I was a kid, one of my main pastimes was to create architectural drawings to create secret passages. And the second thing I wanted was to create a room where it rained all the time. Because I went to the tiki room in Disneyland, and I said, I want a tiki room in my house. You know, I want rain in the window. And when I turned in my early 40s, I made a room where it rains all the time, and I love it. I you know, in the new iteration is the rain room is my house is organized in libraries. It's the Victorian crime and fairy tale library. and a full-size replica of John Merrick sits in the couch. So, when I read in the rain, I'm with John Merrick.
I love it. That's the Elephant Man, to those of
yes.
you, who are not versed in John Merrick. I have a question about, you have said as a director previously that you evolved from being kind of very rigid about movement and blocking and easing up eventually on allowing actors' movements. First, I'm wondering, Guillermo, if that is still something that's sort of an ever-changing part of your filmmaking, and second, I'm wondering if it was kind of brought back as either a blessing or a curse on Pinocchio, where obviously the stop motion movement was precise even in those.
No. The camera move. I mean, look, the camera move. There's the camera position and the camera movement come to me very naturally. So I'm not afraid of being a little looser about it, and I know exactly what I want. So I say push in, jib up, pull back, or crane up, and I can be very fast and very clear about the composition and the lens and all that. That's easy. But now what I think is, before I used to, and I still do, like if you see the staging of the first meeting between Bradley and Cate Blanchett on Nightmare Alley, that's a beautiful piece of staging, and it's based on one of them being higher than the other at different times of the movie. It was constantly a duel of power, so Bradley is dominating, Cate is dominating, Bradley is dominating until one of them wins. So you think about it and you stage it like that, but even then you keep it loose. What I find is very useful is a small, short techno crane, which you control from the head. And what I do is I go to the head of the crane and I block it. I move the camera because you move it like, it's like the lightest thing on earth. And I move it with my actors and I say, oh, we can do this, we can do that, and you keep it alive, yeah.
I'm going to wrap up by asking you about, so many of your films have illuminated life for us, have helped us understand things, have understand life and death, have let us appreciate the importance of seeing things from the outsider's point of view and empathizing with the world around us. I'm curious, though, if in making them it has helped you do that as well and kind of understand life in a different way, even as you were kind of pouring a lot of that into the films. Did making them kind of help you understand things in a different way?
No, they have. I mean, they definitely have. I look, I think that if you don't look at your past and see a change, you're doing something wrong. I think that for me, to do the same over and over again is madness. And sanity is change. No matter what arena you apply that. And it's not madness, it's pride. And pride is an obstacle in art.
Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations on Pinocchio. Guillermo del Toro, ladies and gentlemen.